The names are jumping in and out of the transfer portal here in Lincoln, Nebraska.
You are Locked On Huskers, your daily podcast on the Nebraska Cornhuskers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey gang, DP here. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. And even on the weekends, we still want to get you this content. So we appreciate you hanging out with us, and we appreciate you every day, or you folks who come here every day to get the content and hang out with us. We want to thank the folks from FanDuel Sportsbook. It's America's sportsbook and the number one sportsbook of the National Basketball Association. Make every moment more. FanDuel.com/lockedon for more details and perks. The transfer portal. The transfer portal in its discussion is new. The transfer portal and its execution is new. The transfer portal and its transparency is new. But the transfer portal is not new. Nothing that happens in the transfer portal is new. It is just redone, rebranded, reshaped, reformed, and then redistributed. Here at Lincoln, in Lincoln at the University of Nebraska, specifically in the football program, and let's be clear that it is specific to the football program, the volume of money that is generated through Nebraska football, whether it be for local businesses, state businesses, local government, otherwise, the amount of money generated through Nebraska's football program is off the charts. Now, we know that at the end of the year, they distribute money from football success, and that is just to say the importance of the football program to the athletic department, to the university, to the community of the United States. And in today's version of the transfer portal, where players through social media have power of statement and recruiting and branding, where coaches through social media and engagement in meetings, they have power to control narratives, change perceptions, provide connection or disconnect from the student body and from the boosters and people who love what they do. For parents, there's more, greater expectation. There's a more visible relationship between their young people and the people they're about to hand over to these universities. We're talking about, at a bare level, high school athletes doing business with multi-billion-dollar corporations. And to say that Nebraska football is not a multi-million-dollar corporation, the simple truth is it is. It will do six figures in the millions in business, and they will negotiate, recruit, and offer teenagers and their families to come to their university to help them with their bottom line financially and on the field of battle. Nothing that's happening in the transfer portal hasn't happened before. There were always boosters on the side who would make offers and say, hey, listen, go to my alma mater, go to my local school, play for my friend, the coach. All of those things have always been done. Those stories go back generations. It goes back decades. You're not even talking about something that's new. Our accessibility to it is new. Our ability to communicate about it is new because of social media and engagement. But no money changing hands now didn't change hands 50 years ago. The amount of money may change. How it's delivered may change, because before it was a brown bag left in a tractor outside the young person's house on a farm, or was delivered in a shoebox through a bike carrier who delivered it to an apartment in the city. or it was delivered to dad's workplace with keys to an apartment so that he could live or come and visit his son or daughter in the college town later that year. It was done via tickets left at the airport by anonymous donors, or it was a car dealership who delivered a car to a home unannounced with the key in the door. But now those are being done and they're being tracked, and we can tell you who's doing it and why they're doing it, or at least to some degree we can. There will always be coaches who know that in order to get the player that can change their program or to change their location or to save their career, and I want to be clear, in the next segment, I want to talk about the value of this thing to coaches. But I can put a pin right here and tell you this. If you have a coach who is making millions of dollars a year for his family and his generational wealth, and that contract is 5 years, and you think if there's a player that you believe can help that program prolong your career, elevate your reputation, that if you identify that player, you immediately begin to consider the resources required to get them on board at your university. And once you acknowledge that those deals happen and that thinking exists, then you have a better understanding for the transfer portal. Because the difference has been that now, the boosters and businesses around know their power and value. The student athletes now have a better understanding of their value and their power. The parents of said recruits know their power and value. The AAU and travel ball coaches, they know their power and value. And then coaches, they understand what's it worth. What's it worth to keep your job? What's required? What would you do to keep your job? That is what the transfer portal has become about. We'll throw the break here. We'll come back. I do want to point this out. We're going to talk about coaches in this space and what they're trying to accomplish, and then what things stand in the way because there's boundary and there's friction. That is the transfer portal. We'll be right back to Locked On. Hey, gang, welcome back to Locked On Huskers. And again, I thank you everydayers, and I appreciate you making this your first watch and listen each and every single day. I hope that you take a moment, click, subscribe. Let's get this content to you each and every day. And of course, in the next episode, I want to talk about the transfer portal, but we're going to talk about specific players. And we'll give a daily update on what's happening with Nebraska football. We'll talk about that on the next Locked On Huskers. But to finish this one, I want to talk about this. Coaches have a different existence now than they did 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Here in Lincoln, Tom Osborne did not have to deal with social media. He did not have to deal with the 24-hour sports news cycle. Yes, he had a nation looking at them because the program was that good, but access was provided through the university and through Coach Tom Osborne. Recruits did not get to post on social media direct to Coach Tom Osborne. The media back then could not just post to Coach Osborne and say, hey, Coach, by the way, what about this? But Coach Osborne also did recruiting different than it is done now. Players established differently than they did back then. And players have a different value system than they did some 30 years ago. The value system is different. Coaches make more, substantially more, than they did 30 years ago, 40 years ago. More risk, more reward, more stress, more pay, more responsibility, more boundary. It is different in a coaching position back then that made $300,000 now makes $6 million, $7 million, $8 million. And when you're paid that kind of money, then you want to battle to save that kind of money. Coaches used to say that it was about the winning and not the money. The educator's mantra is it's always about the outcome and never about the income, especially at institutes of higher learning. But that's not the focus anymore. Pollyanna doesn't live here, and it's not just about the outcome of players' lives and the greater humans that you're creating and the better people that you want them to be. It is about winning, and it is about money. There's no other way to put that, and I can't make it any simpler than that. At the top of the pyramid, the highest focus is winning, being hired and being hired. Getting hired and just staying hired, because the pay is really good. And you can't make that down at the local car dealership. You're not going to do that. So the coaches have to make decisions now, and most of the coaching decisions are financial decisions. What players do I keep? What players can I get? What's it going to cost to keep them? What's it going to cost to recruit them? What benefit will they serve in the long run? But can the long game mean enough for me to do it right? And if the focus is about doing the right thing, then what has to be determined, transfer portal or not, is what is the right thing? At Nebraska, you ask the question, when does winning become the thing again? And if you tell me an 8-year contract is about winning, no, it's not. It's about security. It's about security, about a guarantee. The transfer portal makes coaches accountable to the roster. It makes coaches accountable to recruiting. It makes coaches accountable to community. The coach has to help raise those funds. Coach has to make this stuff happen. And the coach knows his needs. Nobody knows the coach's needs better than a coach. If I told you that some schools in the Big Ten were spending between $3 and $5 million a year on basketball and NIL, you should probably ask yourself immediately, well, then what's Nebraska spending for basketball for NIL? And if it's not at the level of $3 to $5 million, then Nebraska's handcuffed and playing at a deficit. If Nebraska is not recruiting at the level of Ohio State and Michigan, who are number 1 and number 2 in the country in recruiting, which probably leads us to guess and assume that they are number 1 and number 2 in NIL spending in those sports. How much is Nebraska raising, and how does it compare with the teams it's trying to be? Not just the teams you're trying to be, but the teams you really are competing with on a daily basis, on a seasonal basis, and then on a reputational basis. Matt Rhule has an issue. And it's not much different anywhere else. If you talk about Colorado, if you talk about Ohio State, if you talk about Florida, if you talk about Georgia, NIL is as much a part of coaching as anything else currently. As a matter of fact, a lot of coaching positions are going to be won or lost based on your ability to handle and negotiate the minefield that is NIL. Matt Rhule has some friction here. I'm not sure what the entire number is, what the working number is for NIL and the Nebraska football program. But if you take that number and you find out that number and you compare it to Michigan and Ohio State, that tells you where Nebraska stands and what their commitment is. But what I can say is that number should be number one in the Big Ten Conference. That number should be number one, period. Nebraska has the resources, it has the support, it has the fan base, it has the generational sellout streak. They have it all. Great marketing, great branding, Husker gear everywhere, all the time. I'll post and close this segment with this. If Nebraska really wanted to be number one in athletics through NIL, it would be. We'll throw it a break. We'll close out this episode of Locked On Huskers. Be right back. Thank you once again, gang, for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. I try to keep things simple here. Just like the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. They keep it simple. Just make everyone more. Go and download. Go ahead and get the app. Open it up. It's secure, safe. Get your FanDuel on. In closing this out and talking about the transfer portal, the players now have voice. The coaches now have voice. The universities now have voice. The universities will tell you through their NIL programs what the focus and priorities are in that space. What they're willing to spend, what they're willing to recruit to donation, who they're willing to share it with. Not every school and not every program in the athletic department gets the same love. But a child that is playing in the tennis department of a Big Ten school may not receive the same amount of interest, intrigue, and donation as football at the same school. We have to be careful in not telling the truth about the transfer portal, because the transfer portal exists for every sport. And the schools that have and the programs that have the best resources, the best facilities, and then this is the part that people miss, the best people, the best coaches, the best educators, the best mentors, the best supporters. Those people have impact and input into how NIL is dealt with, done with, and quite frankly, in how those athletic departments prosper. It's really good to have the transparency if you're actually getting the transparency. If programs are telling you exactly how they're spending money, how much money they're collecting, and where it's going. No matter who you root for, and no matter what program you love, you are currently sitting and wondering, how much does Nebraska spend in football NIL? And then ask, what's it spend in basketball, and then what it spends in volleyball, and what it spends in baseball, softball, etc. Wrestling, bowling, swimming and diving, gymnastics, all of them matter. Tennis, soccer, yeah. But if football is your breadwinner, then what are you doing with your bread? What are you doing with your bread? Are you putting it fully back into the program? Are you getting from it what you need? If you're raising enough and the results don't change, then you have to change the adults in play. If the money is good and you're recruiting the right players, the results will match. That's what happened. That's how athletic programs all over the country are changing their fortunes. And they're doing it with a quickness. TCU should be a North Star. that you can go and get experienced players and teach them how to play and let them catch lightning in a bottle for one season and to validate and justify spending money to make money. There's nothing wrong with spending money to make money. There's something incredibly wrong with spending money, making money, but not winning. The standard is being reset. Keep your eyes to it because it'll tell the story. We thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. Greatly appreciate it. We'll close with those 3 words we love so much. Go Big Red.